The Battle of Stalingrad continues today as the topic that arouses the most interest for World War II fans. The great clash between Germany and the Soviet Union for control of the fateful city located on the banks of the Volga, where fighting took place for almost 6 months, leaving more than 2 million dead, was one of the main turning points of the war. But normally we see or analyze this topic from the large clashes of armies, infantry divisions, regiments, or battalions. And we often forget the experiences of Soviet and German soldiers, their fears, doubts, frustrations, these feelings or emotions that make us human. That is why today we will learn about the life of a German soldier in the Battle of Stalingrad from the perspective of the soldier of the 94th Infantry Division Wilhelm Hoffman. His initial enthusiasm with the rapid advances on the city, his doubts in the face of the many casualties and Soviet resistance, and his fears regarding the imminent end of the battle for Stalingrad. End of July, 1942 today, after we'd have a bath, the company commander told us that if our future operations are as successful, we'll soon reach the Volga, take Stalingrad, and then the war will inevitably soon be over. Perhaps we'll be home at Christmas. August 10, 1942. The Führer's orders were read out to us. He expects victory of us. We are all convinced that they can't stop us. August 12, 1942. We are advancing towards Stalingrad along the railway line. Yesterday Russians Katyushi and then tanks halted our regiment. The Russians are throwing in their last forces, Captain Werner explained to me. Large-scale help is coming up for us, and the Russians will be beaten. This morning outstanding soldiers were presented with decorations. Will I really go back to Elsa without decoration? I believe that for Stalingrad the Führer will decorate even me. August 23, 1942. Splendid news. North of Stalingrad our troops have reached the Volga and captured part of the city. The Russians have two alternatives, either to flee across the Volga or give themselves up. Our company's interpreter has interrogated a captured Russian officer. He was wounded, but asserted that the Russians would fight for Stalingrad to the last round. Something incomprehensible is, in fact, going on. In the north our troops captured a part of Stalingrad and reached the Volga, but in the south the doomed division are continuing to resist bitterly. Fanaticism. August 27, 1942. A continuous cannonade on all sides. We are slowly advancing. Less than 20 miles to go to Stalingrad. In the daytime we can see the smoke of fires, at nighttime the bright glow. They say that the city is on fire. On the Führer's orders our Luftwaffe has sent it up in flames. That's what the Russians need, to stop them from resisting. September 4, 1942. We are being sent northward along the front towards Stalingrad. We marched all night and by dawn had reached Voropanovo station. We can already see the smoking town. It's a happy thought that the end of the war is getting nearer. That's what everyone is saying. If only the days and nights would pass more quickly. September 5, 1942. Our regiment has been ordered to attack Sadovaya station, that's nearly in Stalingrad. Are the Russians really thinking of holding out in the city itself? We had no peace all nights from the Russian artillery and airplanes. Lots of wounded are being brought by. God protect me. September 8, 1942. 2 days of non-stop fighting. The Russians are defending themselves with insane stubbornness. Our regiment has lost many men from the Katyushi, which belch out terrible fire. I have been sent to work at Battalion HQ. It must be mother's prayers that have taken me away from the company's trenchers. September 11, 1942. Our battalion is fighting in the suburbs of Stalingrad. We can already see the Volga. Firing is going on all the time. Wherever you look is fire and flames. Russian cannons and machine guns are firing out of the burning city. Fanatics. September 13, 1942. An unlucky number. This morning Katyushi attack caused the company heavy losses, 27 dead and 50 wounded. The Russians are fighting desperately like wild beasts, don't give themselves up, but come up close and then throw grenades. Lieutenant Kraus was killed yesterday, and there is no company commander. September 16, 1942. Our battalion, plus tanks, is attacking the elevator, from which smoke is pouring the grain and it is burning. The Russians seem to have set light to it themselves. Barbarism. The battalion is suffering heavy losses. There are not more than 60 men left in each company. The elevator is occupied not by men but by devils that no flames or bullets can destroy. September 18, 1942. Fighting is going on inside the elevator. The Russians inside are condemned men, the battalion commander says. The commissars have ordered those men to die in the elevator. If all the buildings of Stalingrad are defended like this, then none of our soldiers will get back to Germany. I had a letter from Elsa today. She's expecting me home when victory's won. September 20th, 1942. The battle for the elevator is still going on. The Russians are firing on all sides. We stay in our cellar, you can't go out into the street. Sergeant Nushko was killed today running across a street. Poor fellow, he's got 3 children. September 22nd, 1942. Russian resistance in the elevator has been broken. Our troops advancing towards the Volga. Our old soldiers have never experienced such bitter fighting before. September 26, 1942. Our regiment is involved in constant heavy fighting. After the elevator was taken, the Russians continued to defend themselves just as stubbornly. You don't see them at all. They have established themselves in houses, in cellars, and are firing on all sides, including from our rear. Barbarians, they use gangsters' methods. In the blocks captured 2 days ago, Russian soldiers appeared from somewhere or other and fighting has flared up with fresh vigor. Our men are being killed not only in the firing line, but in the rear, in buildings we have already occupied. The Russians have stopped surrendering at all. If we take any prisoners, it's because they are hopelessly wounded and can't move by themselves. Stalingrad is hell. Those who are merely wounded are lucky. They will doubtless be at home and celebrate victory with their families. September 28, 1942. Our regiment and the whole division are today celebrating victory. Together with our tank crews, we have taken the southern part of the city and reached the Volga. We paid dearly for our victory. In 3 weeks, we have occupied about 5.5 square miles. The commander has congratulated us on our victory. October 3, 1942. After marching through the night, we have established ourselves in a shrub-covered gully. We are apparently going to attack the factories, the chimneys of which we can see clearly. Behind them is the Volga. We have entered a new area. It was night, but we saw many crosses with our helmets on top. Have we really lost so many men? Damn this Stalingrad. October 4th, 1942. Our regiment is attacking the Barricade factory. A lot of Russian gunners have appeared. Where are they bringing them from? October 5th, 1942. Our battalion has gone into the attack 4 times and got stopped each time. Russian snipers hit anyone who shows himself carelessly from behind shelter. October 10th, 1942. It has been fantastic since morning. Our airplanes and artillery have been hammering the Russian positions for hours and everything in sight is being blotted from the face earth. October 22nd, 1942. Our regiment has failed to break into the factory. We have lost many men. Every time you move you have to jump over bodies. You can scarcely breathe in the daytime. There is nowhere and no one to remove the bodies, so they are left there to rot. Who would have thought 3 months ago that instead of the joy of victory we would have to endure such sacrifice and torture, the end of which is nowhere in sight? The soldiers are calling Stalingrad the mass grave of the Wehrmacht. There are very few men left in the companies. We have been told we are soon going to be withdrawn to be brought back up to strength. October 27th, 1942. Our troops have captured the whole of the Barricade factory, but we cannot break through to the Volga. The Russians are not men, but some kind of cast iron creatures. They never get tired and are not afraid of fire. We are absolutely exhausted. Our regiment now has barely the strength of a company. The Russian artillery at the other side of the Volga won't let you lift your head. October 28, 1942. Every soldier sees himself as a condemned man. The only hope is to be wounded and taken back to the rear. November 3, 1942. In the last few days our battalion has several times tried to attack the Russian positions. To no avail. On this sector also the Russians won't let you lift your head. There have been a number of cases of self-inflicted wound and malingering among the men. Every day I write 2 or 3 reports about them. November 10, 1942. A letter from Elsa today. Everyone expects us home for Christmas. In Germany, everyone believes we already hold Stalingrad. How wrong they are. If they could only see what Stalingrad has done to our army. November 18, 1942. Our attack with tanks yesterday had no success. After our attack, the field was littered with dead. November 21, 1942. The Russians have gone over to the offensive along the whole front. Fierce fighting is going on. So, there it is, the Volga victory, and soon home to our families. We shall obviously be seeing them next in the other world. November 29, 1942. We are encircled. It was announced this morning that the Führer has said, "The army can trust me to do everything necessary to ensure supplies and rapidly break the encirclement." December 3, 1942. We are on hunger rations and waiting for the rescue that the Führer promised. I sent letters home, but there is no reply. December 7, 1942. Rations have been cut to such an extent that the soldiers are suffering terribly from hunger. They are issuing 1 loaf of stale bread for 5 men. December 11, 1942. 3 questions are obsessing every soldier and officer. When will the Russians stop firing and let us sleep in peace, if only for 1 night? How and with what are we going to fill our empty stomachs? And when will Hitler take any decisive steps to free our armies from encirclement? December 14, 1942. Everybody is racked with hunger. Frozen potatoes are the best meal, but to get them out of the ice-covered ground under fire from Russian bullets is not so easy. December 18, 1942. The officers today told the soldiers to be prepared for actions. General Manstein is approaching Stalingrad from the south with strong forces. This news brought hope to the soldiers' hearts. God, let it be. December 21, 1942. We are waiting for the order, but for some reason or other it has been a long time coming. Can it be that it is not true about Manstein? This is worse than any torture. December 23, 1942. Still no orders. It was all a bluff with Manstein. Or has been defeated at the approaches to Stalingrad. December 25, 1942. The Russians' radio has announced the defeat of Manstein. Ahead of us is either dead or captivity. December 26, 1942. The horses have already been eaten. I would eat a cat. They say its meat is also tasty. The soldiers look like corpses or lunatics, looking for something to put in their mouths. They no longer take cover from Russian shells. They haven't the strength to walk, run away, and hide. A curse on this war. And this was the last note in Wilhelm Hoffman's diary. We don't know what happened to him. Possibly one of the many of casualties in the last few weeks of combat in the city. Or one of the 91,000 survivors who would be prisoners when the battle ended in February 1943. If this is true, there is a 50% chance that he will survive the summer of 1943. The unfortunate state of health of those who were captured caused more than half to die between June and July of that year. But he was surely not among the 5,000 who returned home after 10 years in captivity when former Chancellor Konrad Adenauer visited Moscow to talk about the release of the last German prisoners of war, of which there is a record. Some historians claim that Hoffman's diary could be fake and possibly part of Soviet propaganda of the time. It could be true, since the first time this document is mentioned is in the memoirs of General Zhukov. Apart from this primary source of information, which would be Zhukov, no one has ever accessed the diary. Nor is there a detail in the Soviet general's memoirs about how the diary was found. Regardless of whether Hoffman was real or not, his diary serves as an important piece to give us an idea of how hard the fighting at Stalingrad was for the German troops. Of course, a personal opinion is important to know how the other side experienced it, so we may soon have a similar video, but from the Soviet side. Thanks for watching the video. If you are interested about the Second World War, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I upload new videos every week.